Millions of people are forced to face a life or death decision today. Stay in Syria and risk their lives or join the flood of refugees, itself a dangerous journey, hoping to make it to Europe or America. It is an undeniable humanitarian crisis. Gayle Tzemach Lemmon is a senior fellow at the Council on Foreign Relations and knows this problem all too well. She's recently back from Turkey, where she met both refugees at the center of this story. And Gayle, first off, from all of your experiences, what did you learn seeing the refugee crisis from the perspective of the outside looking into the U.S.?
Yeah, I mean, what you hear in American political discussion, I say that as someone who spent a lot of time covering campaigns, is really divorced from the reality of moms and dads who are fleeing bombs falling from the skies onto their children. You know, people who are trying to figure out how to basically allow their children to survive through the next day, let alone the next year. And they really do not have any other option. You know, as one aid worker said to me, these people are not fleeing Syria for a fancy life. You know, these moms and dads are fleeing Syria because they want to survive and they want their children to have a shot at something better, which is something I think a lot of Americans would very much understand. But there's a huge gap between the political discourse in this country, I think, about who these refugees are and the reality of the lives these parents are facing now in war.
And we know that we've seen it play out. Americans, Europeans are wrestling with whether to accept these refugees. Some of them are fearful of terrorists sneaking in. As we saw in the Paris attacks, a couple of the gunmen apparently came in with the refugees. No easy answers here. But what is the solution, in your opinion?
I agree with you. There are no easy answers. And of course, America's anxiety is very much understandable. We saw what happened in Paris. We certainly saw what happened close to where I am right now in San Bernardino and that awful tragedy. But I think it's important to remember that these are parents, these are moms and dads fleeing the same kind of terror that Americans fear. Right? And they have no other place to go. And the process that brings refugees to the United States is one, and I say this as somebody who covered Afghanistan and have tried to help some of my colleagues from Afghanistan enter the U.S., it takes years. Right? First, there's a vetting from the United Nations, and then there's a whole beginning of a process for FBI, Department of Homeland Security, that begins, you know, at least months into the UN process. And definitely less than 5% of those who've applied so far have gotten permission to enter the United States. So we're not talking about anything easy where people could simply wash up on American shores and be considered.
And some would make the argument if you're a terrorist, you're not going to wait the 2 years to go through this vetting process. But look, there are some serious questions about whether this vetting process is foolproof. Listen to what Reverend Franklin Graham had to say about it.
I don't believe in banning Muslims from coming. I think we should put a halt on immigration because our borders are broken until we have a proper system to vet people.
So what's your reaction to that? Can any vetting process weed out terrorists?
I think that there is nothing that is 100%, but I think you can have a vetting process that takes long enough, that is requiring of enough proof and of enough forms of identification that still actually could be worth something, even with a failed state in Syria, that you could be more certain that these are people who really are coming for exactly the values Americans understand, right? Talk to Syrian refugees. They wanted two things. One is to go back to their country, and two was to send their children to school in the meantime, because they are really worried that if their children are out of school, they will never get those years back. And it was Ronald Reagan who talked about the incredibly crucial role that immigration and refugee policy plays in America because of our very foundation. So I think we absolutely have to pay attention to the concerns, but I think it's important to remember who these, you know, moms and dads and young people really are who are trying to come to the United States, and far more of them are unsuccessful than even get considered.
All right, Gayle, thank you so much. Really interesting to hear your perspective. I appreciate you sharing your experiences with us.
Great to join you.